welcome to another episode of Writings from the Hills. And today we are reading a selection from Song of the River by Billy C. Clark. A special thanks to the Jesse Stuart Foundation for giving us permission to use this book for our program. And the Jesse Stuart Foundation has a lot of books on Appalachia and by Appalachian authors if you're interested. Many of them we do have at the library. And Billy C. Clark is one of those authors. And today we are going to read Chapter 1. John was an old man who lived on a shanty boat. He lived by himself, and he kept the shanty boat tied to the willows that shaded the high mud banks at the mouth of the big sandy river in eastern Kentucky. The river was his friend, and he loved it. Like the shanty boat, John had grown old on the river. His gray hair matched the sun-bleached boards that had framed the boat, and age had wrinkled his skin as the wind might wrinkle the surface of the water. During the past 2 years, his hearing had all but left him, and he has since learned to use his eyes and read lips to replace his loss of hearing. The river was his greatest friend, and he always talked to it. He knew and understood the river, and even with his loss of hearing, he felt that it had not forsaken him. He knew that he could not hear the low sound of the waves as they washed against the high mud banks, or the slow ripple of the water as it washed across the sandbars that spotted the river bed. He knew he would never again hear the wind that bent the willows on the bank until their tops sometimes brushed the surface of the water. But still the river had not forsaken him. He used his eyes and read the signs of the river as he might read a person's lips. This way he got many answers that he needed. He could tell by the ripples on the water if rain was coming, and if he knew that he must tie his shanty boat more firmly to the willows to hold against the strong current that would come to the river. Blue water was a sign of good weather and good catfishing. And catfishing was one of the ways he made his living. The river banks grew with young willow seedlings that he used to make willow chairs that were sold in town. The willow chairs were his main source of income, and John could take the young seedlings, soak them in the river until they were soft and would not break, and then bend them into the different shapes for his chairs. Small fish that he took from the fish traps sold for bait, and helped buy the paint that he used to color the chairs. He owed everything to the river. The summer brought fish, turtles, and frogs. The winter brought mink and muskrat that lived in the high mud banks, and the willows were always plentiful. It was the 1st of May now, and he sat on the small deck of the shanty boat and looked out across the water. He studied the ripples that told of rain. His many years on the river had taught him that rain always came in with May. He knew that the river would swell and push water into the creek so the fish would spawn. And he knew that the river was the friend of the fish, and his friend too. A warm wind lifted the tops of the willows on the bank, and John watched the tips of the low willows brush the surface of the water. He imagined he could hear the rain crow, as he'd often heard on the warm summer nights, singing of the rain from the top of one of the willows. Yet he knew that he could not, and would never hear it again. Puffing his pipe and leaning back in his chair, he looked down at the river. River, he said, any day now the rains will come, and with the rains will come old Scrappy and Jack. He'll be coming out of the high river and into the big sandy river to feed. This might be my last year to catching. I'm an old man. Now you tear down the banks and build new banks in their place, and you wash the old willows so the new ones can grow. But you just keep going on and on. But you ain't got the power to wash the grayness from my hair or take the ache from this old body. What you have had the power to give, you ain't ever denied. Reckon one thing, Scrappy and Jack. But I've already reckoned that if I lived with you long enough, you would even give me him. I lived with you a long time, River. I have grown old, and what do you say to that? John looked down at the small ripples and then at the tall willows. Take your time, River, he said. Take your time. Well, if you would like to read more of Song of the River by Billy C. Clark, You can go to our website at www.briggslibrary.com. You can please remember to like us on Facebook and to also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.